What is going on, guys? Matt O'Leary back with another video. In today's video, I want to go into a deep dive on Braelon Allen. The New York Jets spent a fourth round selection on him in this past year's NFL draft. The running back from Wisconsin. I spoke today with Colten Bartholomew, who covers the Wisconsin Badgers. Here's an interview with him on what Jet fans can expect from Braelon Allen. All right, I'd like to welcome on the program Colten Bartholomew. He is a Wisconsin Badgers beat reporter. Colten, welcome to the show today.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Well, wanted to get some more insight from you on Braelon Allen. The Jets used a fourth round pick on him. We talked last year when the Jets spent a second round pick on Joe Tippmann. Wanted to give my fan base and the Jets fans a little bit more insight on the kind of player that they're getting. And everything that I see, especially early on, is the social media videos of a young Braelon Allen, like 17 years old, coming to Wisconsin, lifting all this weight, and putting up really productive numbers as a rusher in his first year at Wisconsin. Could you speak to the kind of athlete the Jets are getting with Braelon?
Yeah, I mean, when he's healthy, there is a really special combination of speed and power in Braelon Allen. And you mentioned the workout videos, and he was obviously a Wisconsin native. He's from Fond du Lac, kind of a smaller town, about 2 hours north of Madison. And he was pretty much a high school legend here by the middle of his sophomore year, just because of the numbers he was putting up, the size he had. He was a guy that Wisconsin was after, throughout his entire pretty much high school career. And then he comes and immediately in the weight room is one of the strongest guys on the team, which you just don't see because you're talking about 17-year-old Braelon Allen against guys who are in, the early 20s. But just a phenomenal athlete in terms of just the running, jumping, lifting, that type of stuff. A guy that really was, I think, early on in his career, more dependent on that than anything else. And then I think over the last couple of years, he's really kind of learned more about the position and what he needs to do to be successful, other than being, a big, strong guy, which is always going to be what he leans back on when, times get tough.
Absolutely. And, when you look at his physical prowess, just it looks like that big back. But I know he didn't run a 40 time at the NFL Combine, but just by watching him, I think he looks a little bit faster than maybe some would anticipate by looking at the size. Any idea, like speed wise, how you would rate him or can maybe compare him to coming into the league?
Yeah, I've heard from multiple people in the Wisconsin program that he would have run in the 4.5 range if he did run a 40, because that's what they had him clocked at between his sophomore and junior year. So the problem for him was he had this high ankle sprain against Ohio State last year, and that kind of messed up his season where he missed some time and then tried to play against Northwestern, could only play a little bit, and then sat the rest of that game out, and then came back for the last two regular season games and helped Wisconsin win those. So when he had that injury, it never healed fully until right around pro day time, combine time. So he just never had the time to train and to run those practice 40s and stuff like that. So that was the reason he didn't run the 40 in the buildup. But I think the biggest thing for him is there's not like NFL elite level like shiftiness to him. Everything's a little bit more of a kind of a short yardage guy in terms of like he'll make somebody miss in the tackle box and then be able to turn the Jets on and go. I think the thing for him is going to be maintaining what he's got right now, that it doesn't take him too long to get accelerated. Because I think one thing that happens with some bigger backs is you get to the NFL level, you're going against bigger guys, and you're just not quite able to reach your top speed. And then you kind of lose some of your advantages. I think that's one thing he's got to avoid in his career. So I think he would have run that 4.5 range. Just how long can he do that at the weight and the size that he's carrying around?
Absolutely. And another thing, people just a lot of times people just assume like, hey, a bigger running back, he must be good in short yardage situations. And I kind of wanted to get your take on Allen and how he is in those short yardage situations. It seems, based on what you were saying, that could potentially be a strength of his game.
Yeah, I think it is. And I think especially when he's feeling well and runs behind his pads, I think this is a general thing about him, not just in short yardage, but I think he tries to be a little bit too perfect at times, where it's like, all right, this play is supposed to go to this particular spot or this particular hole. And then is looking for that and maybe not just accepting what the play is right at the start of the play. So that's one thing in short yardage where if he just has a mentality of like, I'm getting this yard, yeah, he's hard to stop. And when he runs behind his pads, I mean, there's just so much mass and so much strength, upper and lower body to deal with. So I think that's one thing if he's able to do in the NFL level, that'll be something that's really helpful. And obviously when you look at the Jet situation where you've got, some younger, faster running backs that were behind Breece Hall last year and then Breece Hall himself, like I think that's a nice niche for him if he's able to, be that short yardage guy and maybe that goal line type of option. But I think one thing that this is kind of not maybe a knock, but this is just something that was talked a lot about in this whole draft process is he's a really upright runner. I think part of that is just being kind of young in his running back career. Like he wasn't supposed to be a running back until his junior year of high school going into the college level. So I think the fact that he's still kind of learning some of those techniques, and if he gets a little bit more behind his pads as he runs, that'll just steadily improve his I guess, effectiveness in the short yardage and then be kind of a thing that he can lean on as a pro.
Absolutely. And Jet fans are going to be happy to hear that because, as you mentioned, they have Breece Hall, who's more of that home run hitter. And then Izzy Abanikanda is someone they drafted last year. Same thing. He's kind of more of a breakaway speed guy. But something they really lacked was someone who could be successful in those short yardage situations. Someone who could be, maybe more of an inside runner, both those guys kind of an outside guy, but something the Jets didn't really have on their roster last year in the running back room was someone who could pass protect. So I wanted to hear from you. Would you classify that as a strength of his game? I've heard kind of mixed reviews there, but people assume because of his size, that's something that he's good at.
Yeah, I think it became a strength later on in his career. I think early on he struggled a lot because I think it was partially technique and then partially mentality because at times he would kind of just throw a shoulder at a linebacker or somebody coming off the edge. And at the high school level with his size and his strength and everything, that's going to stop pretty much everybody he was going against. But at the college level, guys would either just, deflect him or bounce off and then keep going. And I think once he's kept his feet under him and started using his hands and his feet to pass block as opposed to just trying to be bigger than people, he got really good at it. And if you look at especially the last two games of this year where he's not entirely healthy, doesn't have the full strength that you want him to have, I think that's where you saw his best pass blocking technique and his best, just overall game in terms of, I know what I'm maybe not quite there at right now in terms of how I feel, but just getting under guys, using his size, using his strength, and just not trying to deliver a huge hit every time, just get the block executed. And that's something in pass blocking where it's like, it doesn't have to be pretty. You just got to make sure the quarterback stays clean. So I think that became a strength later on in his career. But yeah, it was something that going into this season, I thought was a big concern for him. And a thing that if he were to not have a successful NFL career, that would be part of it, that the team didn't quite trust him there. But I think he's developed that too. And as I mentioned before, really young in his running back career, a 20-year-old guy. I think if you're an NFL coach, you got to trust yourself that he's shown enough at the college level. You can add more technique and get him even better at it as a pro.
Absolutely. Still, as you mentioned, young in his running back career. It's still a young player, the youngest player in the draft who was taken here. I wanted to ask you about, we talked pass blocking, but pass catching wasn't really something he did a whole lot of at Wisconsin. Is that more of a Wisconsin scheme thing, or is that just not one of his strengths to his game?
Yeah, for sure. The first 2 years, it was a big scheme issue. It was just not really featuring the running back quite enough, in my opinion, in the passing game. And especially with the quarterback struggles that they had during his first 2 years, they made it a little bit tough on their quarterback, whereas really, oh, here's the ball on third and medium. Go pass when you haven't done it in a while. So I think Allen has natural tools as a pass catcher. I think he tries to run without the ball or run before the ball gets there a little bit too often. That's something he's got to focus a little bit more on catch first. One thing that I think hurt him in terms of his production as a receiver this past season after Wisconsin's offense changed was a lot of the passes that he would get would just be kind of quick swing passes that are a little bit better for a more shifty guy and a guy that's a little bit more of that true burner speed. I think his ability and his kind of success as a receiver is going to be more dependent on let him get matched up with a linebacker and be able to wall him off and then still be a little bit faster than most guys that are going to be playing, the inside linebacker that gets matched up with him. Or, let him go downfield and use some of that speed against maybe a little bit slower linebacker or safety. You're going to see a lot of, I think, teams assume they can cover him with an outside linebacker or somebody of that size. And I think if the Jets are able to early in his career burn some teams with that, that'll be something that they can use going forward. So I think he's got some natural skills. I think he's got to get better at it too. Generally good hands. It's just like I mentioned before, if he starts running without the ball, because I think that's one of the things. It's a good mentality to have, but anytime the ball came his way, he wanted to make it a huge play. And I think that maybe hurt him a little bit as a receiver. So some of the things to improve, but I think he's got upside there and it can be used going forward.
So you mentioned the scheme change going into this past season, and a lot of people, they look at Braelon Allen and they say that his 2022 tape was the best. Do you think that it was the scheme change, maybe the injury, a little bit of both that impacted him in the 2023 season?
Yeah, I think number one, the scheme change. I mean, you look at his overall numbers, and I think he was on pace for what you would expect from him. Had he not had the injury and had to miss that time. So I think the injury was a factor, but the scheme change was big for him because a lot of what they asked the running back to do in this system versus Wisconsin's old system was getting more to the outside and a little bit more of an outside zone focus. And when you saw the success of Allen here in this 2023 system, it was mostly with power, mostly with some of the inside zone runs. When they asked him to get more to the outside, it just wasn't quite as successful. So I think scheme change had a lot to do with what maybe people perceive as I think Allen was a better fit for what Wisconsin used to do than what they were asked to do here in 2023. But then I think if you look as overall, Allen's production wasn't quite what you would expect from a guy with his talent at Wisconsin, just in part because the offensive line at Wisconsin hasn't been what it is known to be the last few years. So I think there are a lot of things that maybe didn't quite go his way, but I think going to a system that is going to lean a little bit more on his strengths, some of the more between the tackle zone type of stuff, as opposed to asking them to get to the outside, I think it's going to help him quite a bit.
Yeah, and he'll get to link up with former teammate Joe Tippmann, who Jet fans are very excited about going into his second season. I don't know how much you keep up with these guys after they leave Wisconsin, but Jet fans excited for his sophomore season, as we don't think he'll bounce around as much between guard and center, kind of just take over that starting center role and go with it.
Yeah, it would definitely help him out having that stability because Tippmann had not played a whole lot of guard here at Wisconsin. And when you watched him, you could just see there wasn't quite the same level of confidence. But then when he did move into that center spot, I think you started to see him kind of blossom. And then, obviously anything related to the Jets, it's, if Aaron Rodgers is there, it changes everything, right? I mean, there's a big caveat there. So as long as, you get Rodgers healthy and upright, I think you've got a pretty solid shot.
Absolutely. Colten, thank you so much for the insight on Braelon Allen. And who knows, maybe if the Jets draft someone else from Wisconsin next year, we'll talk for a third year in a row.
Sounds good, man. Thanks for the help.
Once again, thank you to Colten for coming on and joining the program. Who knows, maybe if the Jets draft a Wisconsin Badger again in 2025, we'll be chatting with him again. Guys, please make sure to subscribe before you go. Leave a like. I appreciate you. Comment down below your thoughts, and I'll catch you next time.